Hello and welcome. And welcome. Okay, let me just double check. Okay, so we should be getting sound if we let's just have a listen to the audio that we produced last session. All right, so there we have it. There's our audio. So today, now that we've produced our our more polished version of the audio, now what we're going to do is we're going to basically sync the different video takes. So typically, when I'm working with video, I find that the best results, at least for classical music, are to use exactly the same video camera angle that we use to record while the performance was happening. So in other words, we're going to be using the same video that we were recording at the exact time that we were recording the audio. So, I suppose a more clear way of saying that is that for take 2 audio, we're going to use the video from take 2. And that's just because relative to other types of music, such as in lots of popular music, rock music, hip hop, or anything else like that. If we're recording something to a click track where every beat comes at exactly the same point in time, then we don't really need to do this kind of picking the exact take, because, well, it's going to line up anyways if we use a different take usually. That's not necessarily always the case with things like vocal performances, where a singer might produce something slightly different in one performance than in another. So if it's getting recorded later on, it might be easier to sort of use a different video take where everything is set up so that the video looks better. But when it comes to sort of recording something with an acoustic instrument, typically I find the cleanest or most natural sort of results will end up coming from just the original video footage that happened at exactly the same time that the audio was recorded. Okay, so first things first, we're just going to open up Final Cut Pro, which I actually already had opened in the background. So I'm going to create a new library. I usually create a new library for every new project that I'm working on. And basically, you can think of a library as sort of being like, it's kind of your project, except that it will store all of your files within sort of its own archive as well. So we're going to save it in the same folder as we saved all of the files for this Spanish Romance recording. And I'm actually just going to give it the exact same name. And then we're going to go to Import Media. And in this situation, we're... Oh, not the secret numbers, Spanish Romance. Let's just see, that's not the right one. This is the audio file that we took. And then I'm also going to grab the footage. So we didn't actually use any of take one, I don't believe, so I don't think we'll need to take that. But a couple of things here to sort of check. I don't actually need to copy these files to the library because it's already sort of archived within this folder here. So if I click Leave Files in Place, then it won't make a duplicate copy of all of these files that I'm using within the library. But having said that, sometimes this is a more clean way of sort of maintaining your archive rather than keeping it within your sort of Finder folder. It might be much easier to just keep all of the files that you actually ended up using within your Spanish Romance project library. And so we're not really going to be doing a lot of serious editing, so we're not really going to need either optimized media or proxy media. If you're doing lots of things with multicam, or if you're doing lots of color grading or adding lots of color sort of visual effects, and doing lots of complicated transitions, or if you have an older computer that's a little bit slower, either optimized media or proxy media can be very, very helpful, but I'm not going to use it for today. We don't need to do anything else with the audio here, so close window after starting import. Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to click Import Selected. And we'll see up here at the top left. Normally, this would be doing a little bit more transcoding and analysis, but I guess because it doesn't have to copy any of the files to Final Cut, we've already got this. Okay, so now we have to create a new project, and I'll just call this Spanish Romance, and then I'm just going to keep that date in there as well. Okay, so then this will sort of depend on what your video settings were when you started the recording with your camera. This is all set correctly for me. So under rendering, we have a couple of different options here. If you're a serious video editor, you probably already know what these are even better than I do. So pick whatever codec works right for you. When it comes to audio, we're recording, although we recorded the original file in mono, we're going to use stereo because we exported a stereo file using the Ozone Imager 2. And the sample rate is 48 kilohertz. The two most common in general are 44.1, which is the standard sample rate for CDs, and 48 kilohertz is the standard sample rate for DVDs. And so typically, if you're producing recordings for video, 48 kilohertz is preferred, and if you're just doing audio that has no video with it, typically 44.1 is preferred. But having said that, I've never met someone that can hear a difference between the two, or at least I don't think that I have. No one's ever mentioned that they can hear a difference between 48 and 44.1. You can actually probably just use the automatic settings, but I found that with my camera files, for whatever reason, I was not always getting the correct settings. So basically just set it for whatever you have. Okay, so here we are in Final Cut. So if you're new to video editing, you might not really understand what exactly is going on here. So I'll just sort of close some of these other things that we don't need at the moment. So this is essentially a timeline where our sort of main video angle is going to be dragged down here into the center. And then we'll have an audio file either below it or above it. And this is a timeline just like within an audio program where if, I wonder if it'll let me do this. It will not. Okay, so if I press space to sort of play back our video, you'll notice that this playhead will work just the same way as it does in audio. It just goes from left to right, which means that when we pull this down, you can sort of see we'll have our audio file laid out basically the same way we have it in video format. But before I go any further, I'm going to open up the splice form that we filled out the other day. This is because what I'm looking to do is make sure that I'm putting the files in the correct order, just so that it's much easier to sync them later on. Okay, so what I mean by that is that I can pull this over and Final Cut won't let me move this. So, okay, so we started with take 3. So, what we can do in Final Cut is to start by pulling down our video for take 3. And so we're going to start somewhere right around here. So what I just did is basically I just dragged the file from in here down to here. And I know that this is take 3 because I sort of edited it with take 3. And what I'm doing is I'm going to the left side or the beginning of the original video file for take 3. And I'm just going to pull that up. And so what we're seeing here is the audio waveform, but we're hearing the audio from the camera. So you'll be able to hear that it doesn't sound quite as detailed. It might sound a little bit sort of harsher than the sound from the professional microphones that we used here. But having said that, while we're working, this might sound a little bit weird if you're not used to working this way, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be lining up the video in order to match the audio waveforms. So what I mean by that is we're sort of going to look at where the notes are in the audio file versus where the notes are in the video file, and then we're going to sort of vertically align them so that if we click to put this playhead in the same spot, we want to make sure that the audio looks as similar between these two files. So while I'm playing this back, it's probably going to sound pretty weird for you on the stream, and that's because we're hearing two different copies of the audio. We're hearing both the copy of the audio file produced from Logic, from the microphones, as well as the audio directly from the camera file. So if I press play, so this is basically what it sounds like with both of them playing at the same time if they're synced correctly. And if I turn down the sound of the video file, now you're just hearing the sound of the audio file. But I'm just going to turn it back up. And then we'll notice as soon as it goes out of sync, right there, suddenly it sounds really weird. Or it sounds clear that we are no longer in the same video file. So this is a really great way within the video editing sphere that we can sort of start to see or hear very clearly, okay, we've moved to a different take. So we actually can just switch to the blade tool. I switched to that by pressing the B key on my keyboard. And I can find more or less the spot where I think that it probably... we switched over to the different audio file, and I think it's probably somewhere around here because I can see that there's this bump in the audio file here, which is that pickup note. But very clearly, this take over here is a different one because it's a different section. Sometimes it's not that obvious, but this time it was. Okay, so let's have a look then at the next take. Okay, so the next take should be 4B. So what I'm going to do in order to get this to sort of be in the right spot is I'm going to get rid of the extra part before. I can tell that this is probably, if I select these other video file and audio files, I can press the V key to just disable them while I'm sort of scrubbing back and forth to find where the piece starts. But I think the performance in this, I can tell, probably starts right here because before that there's this long pause where I'm getting ready. And so what I'm going to do to just quickly find the correct sort of spot to line it up is to just move this. So the starting in take 4, this video file is back near around where the start of the other video file was. And then we can sort of pull this up to about the same spot. You can see if I zoom in, and zooming in on Final Cut is using Command and I guess equals. It's the plus and minus keys of Command plus and Command minus, except that we're not holding down Shift, which is great. And I can see this probably lines up somewhere right around here. So if I click there, I can sort of again zoom way in, and I can sort of see it probably starts maybe right there. And if I want to move by a single frame, I can use the little keys, which are the greater than and less than keys. But again, you don't have to press Shift, so I guess it's actually also the comma and period keys. And if I want to see whether or not those synced correctly, or if they're lining up correctly, I can press the select the audio file and press the V key to sort of hear those together. That sounds right to me. Zoom out. Sounds kind of to me like these are actually still synchronized, which surprises me. Didn't think that we recorded. Okay, so now I can tell. Now that it sounds like there's multiple sort of recordings going on at the same time, because there are, I can tell that for certain this is not part of the sort of this is no longer the correct video for the audio that we're listening to. So I'm just going to leave that video angle up here, but I'm going to select it and press V to deactivate it. And up here I'm going to switch back to this view, and then I'm going to look over to our takes, and it looks like, okay, we're back to take 2. So again, what I'm going to do is just pull take 2 down, and actually if I have a look, okay, so it's take 2A, so 2A from measure 17. Okay, so that means that it's the first time we get to that same spot in the piece. So it's probably this one right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the blade tool by pressing B again. And I'm going to switch back to the selection tool by pressing A. And then I can delete the earlier part of the take. And then I can sort of line this up vertically. If you find that it's hard to sort of see your waveform, or like the visual representation of the audio here at the bottom of your video file, what you can do is you can actually turn it up. But I'll warn you that this camera audio is going to sound pretty harsh if you turn it up. And it can also be very, very loud because it's very compressed as well. So usually I'll turn it back down to somewhere around 0 dB, which is where it was before, just to sort of have a listen to it with the audio. So to me, I can kind of feel that it's like doubled. Interesting. This sounds like it's not the correct take. Maybe this is where I should double check that I actually use the correct takes. And I'm just going to open up that logic file just to make sure that I did, because if I remember correctly, I used a different take than I had written down. Okay, so I'm actually going to open up the earlier version of this project just to have a look. Oh, okay, so here we go. It's 17A. Yep, okay, so it starts in take 3 and then, oh, right. This is the spot where we used take 3, except that we cut a little spot out of take 3 because I repeated a note because I made a mistake or something. So we actually aren't using take two. So I can actually, yeah, I'll go ahead and just delete that. Zoom out and pull in another copy of take three. I think this is where it starts. Maybe this is the one where we didn't do the repeat of the A section. But I know that we started basically at measure 17A, which means it's the measure where the major section sort of starts. So if this is the minor section, and that is, if this is the major section, we start here. And it is, so. Let's just pull this into place. Again, I'm just visually sort of locking up first anyways. And then what I will do is I will use the blade tool just to chop off the part in front that we don't need. Then I'm going to select the audio and I'm going to press V to sort of reactivate it. Okay, so I think that's the spot that we edited. Okay, so to sort of chop this extra couple of seconds off, I'm going to use the blade tool, which get to by pressing B. And I think this note goes somewhere right around there. Perhaps not. I'm just going to go back and make sure that this is correct. Feels like I'm looking at the wrong file here. I don't know, it doesn't look like it though. Anyways, to double check and see whether or not this video works, whether it is the correct video or not, what I will do is I'll turn the volume here down to -infinity, or to silence, and then I'll have a listen to it while watching the video. So we're definitely not getting that shift up that we're hearing, so that sounds weird. But if we have a listen to see if this is synced correctly. Oh, pressing the wrong button here. pull this back a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of disable that for a sec. If I turn this up to sort of get a better look at the waveform, I think this might actually go back here somewhere. Maybe there. Yeah, I'm really starting to think that this is probably not the right video file. Anyways, I'm going to turn the video back on for this. It doesn't look or sound right, so perhaps it is the video from take 2. Or perhaps it's a different section of take 3. We will see. Just gonna try disabling it for now. So I'm just going to sort of visually line up this playhead with where the notes really start. I think this is probably the spot. Maybe one forward. And I'll turn this audio back on, and I'll turn down the video. This doesn't really sync either. But that is the spot where things no longer lined up, so perhaps that's what we use. Something desynchronizes around here. It sounds to me like it's probably close enough up until that point. Oops, not that. Zoom back. Command Z is your friend when you are video editing. Just like in most other things in life, I guess. I wish that in life I had the ability to just like undo a thing that I did. That would be handy. So if we were to just use this take for this length of time, just for that section, then we could open up back into take 3 again. Just disable that for a sec. And then from here we can pull this back and turn the volume up. I wonder if we grabbed the wrong section of this take. Perhaps what we actually used was take 3B in this section. Because, in other words, if we're using the correct video file that we were using in the audio file, then everything should basically just line up exactly. So we shouldn't have to do this anyways. So perhaps I should just take the correct notes next time. So this, I think, would go back all the way to probably be here. Okay, so before I press play, I'm just sort of noting that in Final Cut, if you have multiple video angles basically laid on top of each other vertically, Final Cut will always basically just show you the one that's on the top. So right now, it doesn't matter at all that this has a lovely video going underneath it, because this video is basically drawn on top of that. So I have to disable it by pressing V in order to see the one that's down underneath. Okay, so I'm going to have a listen to see if this lines up. This is not the right section. I know that because if I... This is the minor section. So it's either this one that starts here, or it's the one that starts there. So let's try this one. So to hear if it syncs, I have to just listen to the audio So it sounds like it does not. So I think that's the one. And that's the spot that we patched. So. And oh, actually, we've already got this take out there, so basically ignore this whole section. So if I actually just silence that and have a listen to this. So I think that's the spot where we want this take to start. And in the original audio file, it's to go right to there. There we go. Something different seems to happen there. So if we switch back over to takes. Okay, so I think it looks like you see here we've got our take 3, and then we've got another take 3. Basically, I can tell that it's a take 3 because it starts with 03 in the numbers after Spanish Romance. This is just going to be whatever you named your own take files after you had saved them. So if you named them Spanish Romance and then just a 3, you'd have just a 3 instead of a 03 here. But I tend to use 03 for my takes, so that here I can tell that this is a 03, which means when we go back over into Final Cut, okay, so we start, this is the first part of the take 3 section, then this would be the second spot, and then, so if we, again, just listen back through it by I'll press space and then we'll listen to it, and then when we get to this one spot where something happens to the audio file and we can tell that it no longer is the same audio file, what we can do is we can just turn the volume of this all the way down once we get to that spot, and then we just have to find the spot that lines up with this. And we saw that it was also in take 3, so perhaps it's this. So you see here where all of the sort of thumbnails have sort of disappeared in our waveforms. That's just because Final Cut is basically telling us that it's you have to stop playback in order to see these, just because otherwise it will be dropping frames or audio will be cutting out. So if I see this note looks like it's got a little bit of a sharper attack, it might be easier for me to just line up to that note. And let's see if this looks and sounds correct. You know, obviously that's going to look and sound tight because that's just the single audio file. So let's try it with the original audio and see if this lines up. Okay, so now something else has changed, which means that we're on a different take now. So I'm just going to cut it there using the blade tool. If I zoom out, let's see. Okay, so that was the section that we were using take 3 for, which is this one, I believe. So I think that for the repeat of this major section, we had said that we were going to use take 4A. So if I have a look in here, looks like we did. Okay, so now we need, we can just pull down another copy of our take 4. Pull this back so that basically this is starting roughly at around the same time, and then we can sort of pull this forward. So if we just look at their waveform, I can see that looks like the first repeat of the minor section. This looks like the first repeat of the B section. So if we're going to take 4A of the major section, it would probably be there. Let's just delete that. And let's see if we are correct. Actually, I'm just going to sort of mark this. And I'll actually delete that. I think we'll need that. So something changes somewhere right around here. Okay, so it sounds like it's probably the right take up until around there. So if we have a look over at our Logic project, see, okay, so we're splicing back to take 4 again. So we don't want to delete this video file. What we want to do is we need to find the spot that happens right after this. Going to be the first file, and then so I think it's this note here that we're looking for in this file. Yeah, and it sounds like it's just right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try this back on. sometimes what's easiest to do here is to just find the most sort of distinctive bump in the waveform, or transient. And sometimes it's just easiest to line that up. It doesn't really look to me like that's correct because I don't think that the shapes line up overall. Let's just mute this to have a listen. Way too far forward, perhaps? Perhaps those go right here. So if you find that you hear sort of like there's this weird sort of like echo kind of sound, often what that means is that you're nearly perfectly synced. And so if that's the case, what's happening is that either the audio or video file are playing just one or two like frames ahead of the other one, so our brains are actually able to hear that it's the same file, except that it's just spread apart more or less in time by anywhere between like 5 to like 30 milliseconds. And that's because if it's longer than that, you'll start to hear that it'll sound a little bit more like two totally separate sort of recordings. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting the video take to sort of slide back and forth, and then I'm using the sort of greater than, less than, or the comma and period keys to sort of move that individual file forward or backwards by 1 or 2 frames at a time, and that will sort of help me sort of find the perfect sync. Because when you get the perfect sync between the video file and your audio file, that sort of doubling effect just disappears, and it's more as if you're kind of just hearing one audio file. Okay, so we're going to pull this video take out as soon as we hear that lovely pickup note. So you know that this is no longer the correct take. And actually we can just turn that all the way down. Turn that other way down. Okay, so let's have a look back at our Logic project. And okay, so we're back to take 2. And here it looks like we chose to use take 2B. Okay, so let's switch back over into Final Cut. You can actually just disable that because I don't think we'll need that anymore. So when I say that we're using take 2B, so we're using the second repeat of take 2, which is actually right here. And we'll not need the rest of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute the audio. And again, I'm just doing that by clicking on the file down here, and while it's got that yellow outline to show that it's selected, just press the V key. I think this probably line up just right about here. Let's try that. So somewhere around here something desynchronizes, so let's just have a listen. It's probably somewhere right around here. And I remember that this... Yeah, okay, so we switched back to take 4 just because I think the take 4 had the nicest ending. So just pull take 4, and here, since I know that this is the ending of the video, what I can do is just basically cut somewhere right around up to here. I can actually just sync it to the end of the file. So visually I'm sort of thinking final notes somewhere around here maybe. This will sort of just put us in roughly the correct spot. And then I can probably take somewhere right around maybe here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for the exact note which I think we started from the new video or from the take 4. Where that is different from the take 2. So somewhere here, sort of see if I So since I've more or less got things a little bit in place, pull this a little and see if that's the spot. Okay, so now we sort of just have to figure out where in here we're going to sort of do this crossfade. Okay, so what I'm actually going to just do is I'm just going to turn this all the way down, the video files. Now let's just have a sort of visual look to see if this looks, if it doesn't line up with the sound. So I didn't really see anything that popped out as looking really weird to me. So now I think what we can do is we can start reactivating our clips. Just gonna zoom in here, and I'm going to start pulling the video in to make sure. If I turn down the video, so we're gonna need to do some kind of video transition here, because as you can see here, this is take 3, and then this is take 4. So there are a couple of ways of doing this. One thing that we can do is we can just basically crossfade between the two videos, and sometimes this looks okay, but it kind of feels wrong to me to do this, because if we're paying really, really close attention when we're watching the video when it gets posted later, we can kind of tell that this was sort of faked. But there's a little bit more of an elegant way of sort of doing this crossfade, or to sort of transition between two sort of takes from the same, two different takes from the same video camera, like camera angle. So one way of doing this is to sort of pull in a very sort of short fake. When I say fake, I mean it's not the actual camera angle. And so here we have, if you remember, we can look at, so because there's the 0.3 in the video file here, we know that this is take 3 and this is take 4. So we know that take 3 and take 4 have the same camera angle. Whereas if we look at take 2, take 2 has a different camera angle. So one thing that we can do is pull down the video from take 2. Sort of bear with me here. So what we're doing here is we don't need to sync this exactly with the audio, and that's because we're only going to be using it for a few seconds. But I think it'll just be this sort of transition in here. We can sort of just delete that other part of the video. So that pickup goes pretty much right to around here. We're still trying to sort of sync it as closely as possible. Another option, instead of using this kind of footage whatsoever, is we could sort of have a transition to something that's totally unrelated, that's not actually performance footage, such as other footage that we shot like that day if we were on the location. If you're in a beautiful looking church or a natural setting, this could be a great spot to sort of have like a camera sort of just like looking around, to sort of like just crossfade between, or it can be a shot of your performer, just sort of casually like setting up, or like sort of just talking or walking, or whatever you want to sort of use here. And I'm just going to quickly turn this down, and then I'm just going to sort of see, this is, you're going to see, it'll be really choppy sort of between the videos because we haven't done a crossfade yet, but so it's going to have to come in after that sort of rolled chord. Okay. So to do this, leave Control L. No, Command L. No. Okay, so I'll right click on this and we're going to show video animation. And then we're going to open up compositing opacity. So some of you are probably really great with Final Cut or video editing already, and you're probably wondering why I would not just put this into a multicam file. And it's basically just because I wanted to have a little bit of extra control sort of in how I'm switching back and forth between takes. But what I'm doing here with the compositing opacity is you'll see the video is sort of going to fade in to the new angle, and then we'll just sort of pull this one over here over as well. Maybe I'll just pull that farther back. I think. We'll just hide video animation. And actually, okay, so that is Control V. So if you're working this way, instead of using Control V, instead of using your multicam clips, and again, there's nothing wrong with using multicam clips. The other thing you can do, instead of sort of manually putting in using your opacity like I'm doing here, is you can actually just open up your transitions. And you could use, I believe it would be a cross dissolve, or it would not be flow. And that would have the effect we're going for here. Control. So again, we're sort of going to have to do the same sort of thing with our take two, because here we're going from take 3 to take 4. So I think this section of the piece is, it's just about to enter the major section, so be right about there. I think. If I just mute the audio from here for a sec. And so it's the minor section again. Okay, so the section would be right about here. Again, we're really just using a very brief section of this to sort of transition between. And I will mute that. Enough. I'm going to full screen this. Yeah, so I think that's close enough for me. So something else we can do here to get this transition to work. Do they? I wonder if these cross dissolve will work. So it actually almost works. Let's see what happens if we do this optical flow. This tends to be a very, very trippy sort of effect where like one image sort of melts into the next. So let's see. I think I have background rendering off. So if you're new to Final Cut, the idea of rendering is kind of not what you might think of if you're used to working within audio. Because when we talk about rendering in audio, we're usually talking about our export or our bounce, which in Final Cut, I believe is share. Yeah. So rendering is actually just generating our temporary video file that actually shows us what it's sort of like our preview file. We obviously don't really need to use this in the audio world because in audio our files are just so much smaller and there's so much less processing going on relative to the amount of video processing that we have going on here. Still not. Oh, I see why. Okay, it's because it's not going to be correctly flowing into the next one. So we're not actually going to do this at all. That's not going to be helpful. So another thing that we could do instead of using the different camera angle, which we use in camera angle 2, we already have it here, so perhaps we'll end up using it, but while we're here, I want to try instead to just crop this version of the video. So if we say zoom into this part, let's see if that looks okay. So it's the same video footage, same video angle, but it still somehow looks less fake than if we were to do what we had before, which was this. So I'm just going to redo all of those things. So since we have this version of angle 2 over here, maybe we'll just throw a cross dissolve on that and see how that looks. I think that looks great. so since we're not using this, I can actually just create another copy of this video. Link it up to here. Okay, so we needed to cover that transition there. Perhaps if we so let's just sort of sync this again. So this comes to somewhere right around here. This audio may or may not fit. If we use the cross dissolves, this gives us a little bit of extra buffer area. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit too late, so. Here again, what we can do is go back in to sort of crop this, but instead of doing a real crop, what we're going to do is a Ken Burns. And I'm going to switch this so that it starts in the slightly more zoomed out look, just because this one that we're using before may actually need to go back in and make that even more dramatic. So the start is going to be even more zoomed in. Then we'll throw our cross dissolve on here. Throw a faded color at the end there. So what I was doing there to sort of pull this transition back is just to sort of make it start earlier, to sort of fade in. Do that. To just have that fade to black a little bit. Actually be way sooner than that if we want to go for a really dramatic long throw a fade to color. Or in Final Cut, this transition is called fade to color, but 99.9 times out of 100, or 99.9% of the time, I'm only ever fading to black. But if you don't want to fade to black, sometimes fading to white can be cool. Or you can actually fade to a color if you wanted to do that. I think it looks kind of weird, but your use case might be totally different than mine. I think maybe instead of fading to color, I wonder if we use Gaussian? I'm not sure how that's pronounced. This blur might work better. Some reason, I'm not sure why, but let's try without. This is a jump cut. If we remove the sort of crossfade, which is coming actually just from the cross dissolve. Actually think maybe it's better if we just I actually think this is a little bit of a longer shot, so I might just do a very, very subtle Ken Burns. And this Ken Burns effect, if you don't know it, it's just a very subtle sort of like panning or zooming in. I don't actually know who Ken Burns is, but I guess he, assuming Ken Burns is a he. First trademarked it or made it famous. I'm not really sure. Sort of just at some of the other shots, and I'm just gonna think about maybe Ken Burns, and again, just to sort of get a little bit of very slight motion, I'm just gonna have it be somewhat subtle. And this is going to be sort of subtle enough that you might not even notice it. I think this is a lot more important if you are in a situation like I am, where I'm often just recording myself, and so therefore I can't really be moving the camera a lot myself. So if you have footage where you're only using sort of like static camera angles, you don't have a camera person, so if your footage is kind of very like flat, because it's basically like in one spot and then it's in another spot and then it's in another spot, sometimes adding a little bit of this Ken Burns effect can sort of just add a nice little amount of motion. And yeah. Again, it's a fairly subtle amount that I'm using here, but Ken Burns effect on this yet. So let's just put that on. So keep in mind also that the longer your clip is that you're adding it to, the faster, the longer that the clip lasts, the more distance you can travel at the same speed. So another way of saying that is, if you are making a Ken Burns effect that is very, very subtle, such as like the difference between the start and the end frames are almost the exact same shape like this. I can actually make it even more dramatic. Sort of show you. If this is over a really long length of time, you'll notice almost not notice this whatsoever, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But I think more importantly, you can sort of keep in mind that if we have a very short file that we're going to add a Ken Burns to, you probably don't even want to do like a standard effect, and that's because you'll see it'll look a little bit like this. Which can certainly work for certain pieces of music or many different sort of types of videos. But if you're recording a classical music video, typically, unless there's a lot of motion within the music itself, I find that this can be a little bit sort of distracting to have too much movement within the camera. So I'm going to go back into the Ken Burns, and I'm just going to sort of open that back up so that it's pretty close. I actually think that this Ken Burns is actually still a little bit too fast for me, so what I might do is pull that forward. I feel like we're really, this shot is a zoom in to sort of a shout out to Rubio, who built my guitar, Luthier Rubio. Thanks. I think that this is a little too fast as well, which would make sense because that's a really big difference and it's not a very long file. So maybe that's fine. So now that I think everything is more or less in place, there are a couple things that I can sort of start to add if I would like to. One thing I can start to sort of look at is, well, I could do things with the video effects. I wonder I might end up using some sepia. I think that sepia sort of gives this nice sort of makes it feel a little bit more vintage somehow, which I think is really fitting for this kind of piece. Let's see what else we have. So I have from my FCP Effects a series of different plugins that I find work really, really well. One here that might work. It's the finishing plugin. These are often used much more for sort of Hollywood looking or more filmic looking shots. Ooh, black and white kind of looks cool. This looks a little bit more Polaroid like, maybe. It's too much, maybe. kind of like this one. I kind of like the black and white. I think what I might end up doing is I will go with the preset 6. Let's see. What am I gonna do in here? So we have lots of options here. I think what I might just do is maybe turn the saturation down a touch. That looks okay. The other options we have, I wonder what else is good in here. Could, if that aged paper look. I think so, maybe aged film. I think that's a little too intense for me. Film noir. This sometimes looks very, very nice. Let's actually just turn off the finishing plugin to sort of see what it looks like. It's probably a little bit too intense for this setting that we have here, which is just a little bit too much noir for me. Cool. Textures. Nope, don't think that's going to be what we're looking for either. Super 8mm is kind of nice. The vignette can be a nice effect as well. I think here. Try heat, desert glare. No, I think these are kind of all a little bit too intense for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my FCP effects. And then perhaps what I will actually do is add a little bit of that sepia. There's a comic sepia. Well, that looks neat, but I don't think that that's necessarily what I'm going to be using. So the other thing that you can do that is often much more effective at sort of getting a better idea of what you want your final video to look like is to basically just export it as from this from this project that we've currently created, which is basically your whole recording from the beginning to the end. And then you can re-import that individual video into your Final Cut project. And then you can then add, let's say, a sepia effect to just one video file that you had exported and re-imported. And that often is much faster and easier to do. But I'm looking to sort of just get this done right away. So what I'm going to do is to just make sure I get the settings pretty much as I like it here. Let's see if I'm going to soften it. I wonder if I soften the highlights, what that'll look like. Nope, too intense. If I change the hue, nope, not gonna likely do that either. Maybe we can turn down the vibrancy a little bit. So basically, if the vibrancy is all the way up, it looks like this. If the vibrancy is all the way down, it looks, well, like that. But if I just reset that, yeah, I think that's good enough there. need to raise the level of anything? I don't think so. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this effects preset, and I'm just going to call it the name of this project, which is Spanish Romance 092621. So I'm not going to save the crop, I'm just going to save the finishing plugin, and I'm going to stretch to fit. And then now I can look at the projects, and it is now saved in here as my Spanish Romance project preset. So then I can just drop it over here, and then it'll have exactly the same sort of effect. And all I need to do now is just drop it onto all of the individual videos. Now, sort of as I bounce around, I can sort of have a look at all the different angles. And what is going on here? Oh, that's because I missed one. That's why. Okay, so as you can see in Final Cut, when we get these lines up at the top of the screen, it means that it's all these effects have to sort of be rendered in order for Final Cut to likely play them back super accurately in real time. But rather than waiting for the computer to sort of do all the rendering, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a playthrough of the full thing, and then I'm just going to sort of have a look. What you might notice is that some of the video footage is going to be a little bit choppy while it's playing back. And we can switch that up here between switching through better quality or better performance. And that's basically, if you have it set to better performance, you're going to get, let's say, 30 frames or 60 frames per second. So your motion is going to look really, really smooth. But it's probably going to reduce the overall quality of the image that you see just in your sort of like a preview window up here. I don't think that your quality settings here are going to affect the file that you export when you share. So you can really do whichever sort of works better for you. I tend to use better quality because it's more important to me that the effects that I'm using will sort of show me an actual like frame, what it actually will look like, rather than the motion in between the frames, if that makes sense. Now again, this is not necessarily true for everybody. If you're doing any kind of effects that sort of affect how the motion in your frames or in between your shots looks, then it probably makes more sense to set your video playback to better performance. Okay, so now I think I'm just going to add a title to the end of this. So do I have... just find where I keep that. That's the one. I'm just going to look at a couple of different options that I have here. So one of them is this one. So that's okay. I think that that's nice, but I think I had a project that had a version of that. Sorry, I moved this the other day. Is this the one? To be updated to work with this version of Final Cut Pro. Sure, let's see if this is the one. Okay, so that's the same one. Okay, so that's a little bit more information. And this is a totally different thing. This is the lobby, the lobby animation for my channel. Okay, so I think. Okay. Yeah, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this from my JBS animation. And I'm going to paste it into here. Here, I'm just going to put this in. I'm not actually going to give it a concert name. I'm just going to. This piece is anonymous. Formats, don't need that. Okay, and this was September 26th, 2021. I'm just going to call this Bertino Sound because that's where I am. I am in my studio. Now. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this. Wait, I'm going to do this. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling this. Okay, great. Forward. So I'm just going to play the last couple of seconds of the video. That it's doing that weird thing where sometimes it just hits this in slightly earlier. It's remarkable that that's only one frame apart, but somehow this seems to always fade in way faster than my logo always seems to fade in faster than the text, and I swear I'm not doing that on purpose. And now all I'm going to do is just move that a little bit because it's really frustrating me. To look at it. And this is the part that we could all just spend hours trying to get this just right. We'll never quite achieve perfection when it comes to layout of stuff. Zoom back and have a look at it again. Yeah, I think that this is good enough for me. Except for that. Now, there's a joke how the recording engineer or the sound guy or the technician is often the first to arrive, last to leave. And it turns out that my logo is the same. Always wants to appear first and then disappear last. Okay. So, with that complete. So this is the part where if you're new to Final Cut Pro or video editing in this, what do they call it? Non-destructive form of video editing, you're probably wondering to yourself, why can't I go to File and then Save? And who would create video editing programs that you can't save in? Well, it turns out that it is always automatically saving, which is great because, you know, things crash. But it's basically already backed up. And so if we want to sort of export our file, we go to Share, and then we can export any of these different files. This one here, you probably won't have popping up on your own Final Cut share options, and that's just because this is sort of my customized settings that I picked within Compressor and then added that preset back into Final Cut. Okay. And okay, so the other thing to keep in mind here is that you want to pick a frame that looks really cool because it'll be sort of your thumbnail for your video until you replace it. So maybe click on that and then we click out of the finishing plugin. Okay. I think that looks cool enough. Files, share, 4K ALAC. Basically, this preset is called 4K ALAC just because it's a 4K export with ALAC audio. This is just the Apple lossless audio codec. Yeah, okay, and then I'm going to export it to the folder there. And okay, then we'll see here up in your top left corner of your screen, you've got Final Cut's sort of pie chart, I guess you would call it, which is really, it's a loading bar, but it sort of visually gives you a frame of reference of what it's currently doing and how much of that it has completed. But of course, we're at 10%, which is actually relatively fast for an export of a video file relative to how long most of my videos usually take. But that's because I didn't add that many extra effects or multi-camera angles or anything like that. If you're working within multicam and you have sort of 4 different multicam angles or maybe even more than that, depending on how you personally video edit, you might find that this takes quite a lot longer than what I was doing sort of by just using individual video clips. But that's not to say that one is right and the other is wrong. This is just the one that I used today. And so thank you so much for sticking through this series. I am certain to do more streams sort of like this, maybe a little bit more polished, because now I've done it. So feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and just let me know if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to do. If you'd like me to go through this whole process using free programs and free plugins, such as maybe using Reaper and DaVinci Resolve, I can certainly do that if lots of people want me to do that. Or I can do an editing video where I run through this whole thing basically in another program such as Ableton. I'm used to using lots of audio and video programs, so I'm more than happy to go more in depth into any of them. Having said that, thanks so much, and you should be able to find the video up on YouTube for the actual Spanish Romance performance video sometime over the next day or two, or perhaps longer depending on how long it takes YouTube to upload it. So, thanks for sticking around.